right, I know some of y'all are grabbing lunch, catching up with friends, I hope making new friends. Welcome back. I'm Sarah Shaw, the Director of Community Engagement with Indian American Impact Projects. You've probably got a lot of emails from me, and don't worry, you will continue to get them with lots of calls to action after you leave inspired today. But really excited about our lunch program. We've got some phenomenal speakers and a panel, so we're gonna kick things off. This first person needs no introduction, but we're gonna try to do it justice anyway. But Richa Moorjani was born and raised in the Bay Area, California. You probably know her because she made her series lead debut in Mindy Kaling's Netflix dramedy, Never Have I Ever. After its premiere in 2020, the show immediately hit #1 around the world in the Netflix top 10. Raise your hand if you have seen this show. All right, see, Richa, you have lots of fans. And it's been the Netflix top 10, numerous awards, People's Choice Award, beating out somewhere between 15,000 applicants from a global casting call for the 3 South Asian leads. Richa won the hearts of an international and intergenerational audience with her portrayal of the brilliant, beautiful, and stereotype-subverting Kamala. For the last 2 years in a row, Goldhouse has included Richa in their A100 list of Asian Americans who had the most impact on culture and society. Richa just finished moderating a fantastic panel on the climate change crisis, so she is also dedicated to advancing progressive causes. So give it up, Richa Moorjani.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. How are you? Can you hear me? Okay, great. I hope you guys are all enjoying your lunch. How's lunch? Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here today, and thank you to Impact for having me here. I think what Impact is doing is just absolutely unprecedented and incredible and so important, bringing together so many incredibly forward-thinking and trailblazing people, South Asian people in one summit and one gathering, and all of you guys can network and create change together and inspire other people and take what you learned today all over to wherever you live in this country and take action. I just think it's so wonderful. So let's give a round of applause to Impact. So I know a lot of you maybe have been hoping to hear from a very brilliant woman who lives in DC named Kamala today. But I hope you'll just settle for someone who plays a brilliant woman named Kamala on TV. Not the same thing, I know. So initially, when Neil Makija over here asked me to speak here today in front of all of you, I was about to say no. I was immediately hit with a wave of anxiety and symptoms of a phenomenon I think a lot of you may be familiar with, and I'm talking about imposter syndrome. Years and generations of conditioning and subtle messaging from society and a system that wasn't designed for all of us have resulted in many of us feeling like we don't belong and we don't deserve to be where we are. But being here today in front of all of you, each and every one of you South Asian trailblazers and leaders, I am reminded of why it is so important and wonderful to honor everything that we are and to celebrate everything we have collectively accomplished together. Celebrating both our own and each other's successes is so essential to fighting back against this harmful and unnecessary syndrome that has been inflicted on us. I am filled with so much pride to see my fellow South Asians here doing such extraordinary and important work. It makes me think about how far we've come, but it also reminds me of times where the landscape was slightly different. When I was growing up in this country, and I'm sure the same thing goes for many of you, and even in the more beginning stages of being an actor, South Asian representation in Western media was virtually non-existent. And the little of it that there was often leaned into one-dimensional character tropes and dangerous stereotypes that made so many of us feel dehumanized and unseen. I would have never dreamed that one day there would be American shows and movies with complex and nuanced South Asian characters, or that our existence would be so normalized in spaces like Hollywood and politics. I'm beyond grateful to be part of a series that has been groundbreaking in so many ways, and I've seen firsthand the impact that it's had on South Asian, young South Asian, older South Asians, people in this room who have expressed how it's given them a sense of belonging that they so desperately craved. It truly brings me chills when I think about the progress that we've made and the opportunities that we've seized and created for ourselves, but there is still so much work to be done. Representation is so important, but not only in Hollywood. It's imperative in every field, especially where individuals have the power to influence, inspire, and create change, whether that be in media, politics, STEM fields, advocacy, the list goes on. It is vital that we see ourselves reflected in all these arenas, not only for us to see what we can aspire to and what we can actually achieve, but even more importantly, for what it shapes how the rest of the world sees us. It directly impacts how we are perceived and treated in everyday life, how we are employed, and how we are included or not included in the conversation. The increase that we've been witnessing in positive representation is undoubtedly thrilling and long overdue. And we are living in such an exciting and crucial time where we as a community are finally reaching the spaces that we deserve to be, including the second highest office in the land, another Kamala reference. This is in large part thanks to our parents and our ancestors and others who came before us to lay down the groundwork. Our growing presence in this country and in every industry also serves as an opportunity to use our voices and platforms to advocate for causes that we care about and that are important to us. I strongly believe that with visibility and influence comes moral and social responsibility. I'm grateful to have the privilege to be able to use whatever platform I have gained through my work as an actor to be an outspoken advocate for my community, but also for other issues that I strongly care about, including mental health, climate justice, and animal rights. As she mentioned, I just had the incredible honor of moderating a panel of some very prolific South Asian changemakers in the environmental space. Some of them, if you're here, raise your hand. Oh my gosh, they didn't make it to lunch. How sad. Well, we're thinking of you. I am filled with so much hope after speaking with them and hearing about the efforts that they are taking towards combating the climate crisis. If there is one message that I have for all of you, it is that every voice matters. Each and every one of us has the distinct power to improve the quality of not just our lives, but of future generations through our work and lifestyle choices. I've personally witnessed how seemingly small individual actions have a ripple effect. I receive messages almost on a daily basis from people who tell me that through my work they feel inspired and emboldened to take certain actions in their own lives, whether that's to become an actor or pursue a career in the arts, or to adopt a plant-based lifestyle to reduce their own impact on animals and the planet. When I hear and see messages like these, any feelings I have of imposter syndrome are promptly replaced with me feeling like my voice and actions actually make a tangible difference. And that can happen for anyone, not just an actor or somebody with any kind of following. It is easy for so many of us to feel overwhelmed or disconnected or completely disengaged from issues that seem larger than ourselves or unrelated to ourselves, especially when we have personally felt marginalized and invisible in so many ways. But I think it is so important to remember that we are all part of a large ecosystem where our interconnectedness and our interdependency with each other and all living beings is undeniable, as we've all seen, especially during this pandemic. And as we, as South Asians, and other people in this room, have incredible power to create systemic change when we act together. But that starts at the individual level. I believe that the part of the process of feeling seen and feeling empowered is by actively creating space for and empowering others from our community, especially those with less privilege from ourselves. We, as one of the highest earning and fastest growing minority groups here in the US, have so much more influence than we often think, and our words, decisions, and votes matter. I'd love to leave you all with one of my favorite quotes by Arundhati Roy in honor of today's theme, Dream with Ambition. "The only dream worth having is to dream that you will live while you are alive and die only when you are dead, to love, to be loved, to never forget your own insignificance, to never get used to the unspeakable violence and vulgar disparity of the life around you, to seek joy in the saddest places, to pursue beauty to its lair, to never simplify what is complicated or complicate what is simple, to respect strength, never power, above all, to watch, to try and understand, to never look away, and never, never to forget." Thank you. She has a lot of really good quotes. If you ever want to write a speech and need a good quote, just look up Arundhati Roy quotes. Thank you all so much for being here and for showing up to learn from each other and celebrate each other and work together. Thank you again to Indian American Impact Project for having me here. It's such an honor. I hope to meet more of you guys today and at the gala and hear more about the work you're doing.
All right, how about one more round of applause for Richa Murjani? Richa, we've only met recently, but we hope you know you spoke about imposter syndrome that with Impact Project, you are always in the company of friends who look up to you and admire you for everything you are doing for the community. So thank you. Next, I'm excited to introduce Minnie Timaraju, who will be joining us virtually. If we can start queuing her up. Minnie is a founding board member of the Impact Project and the president of NARAL, Pro-Choice America. So we are thrilled to hear from her, given what is happening in the world. There we go, Minnie. Minnie is a seasoned campaigner, skilled coalition builder. Neil says an excellent mom with the cutest boys, high impact organizer, and talented leader with over 20 years of experience leading federal, state, and local campaigns. Previously, she served as the senior advisor to the director of the Office of Personnel Management in the Biden-Harris administration, and prior as Hillary for America's National Women's Vote Director. She has a long-standing commitment to the fight for access to the full range of reproductive health care, and we could not be more honored to have her join us today and let us know how we can heed the call of action. Give it up for Minnie.
Hi, everyone. I'm so bummed not to be with you in person. What a terrible time to be struck with COVID-19. So that's why I'm not there. My family and I are recovering. But I'm Minnie Timaraju, president of NARAL Pro-Choice America, proud Impact member, and a former founding board member. So I'm really grateful to be with you today and happy AAPI Heritage Month. As I said, my family's in recovery, but we're hanging in there. So keep masking and get your booster shots. It's really important. But thank you to Neil and the entire team for asking me to come to join you and share a bit about the moment we're in and the work I'm leading at NARAL. I think it's important to begin with an honest conversation about where the state of reproductive freedom in our country stands. It's no understatement to say that we are facing a moment of absolute crisis. The leaked Supreme Court's draft majority opinion in the Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization case, which is just a few short weeks ago, I mean, maybe not even a full 2 weeks ago, it feels like a lifetime, has made clear that the Supreme Court is poised to uphold Mississippi's 15-week abortion ban in a case that directly challenges Roe v. Wade. And if the court upholds this cruel ban, it will end Roe and the constitutional right to abortion as we know it. If that happens, 28 states across the country are likely to take action to ban abortion outright. Of those, 13 states already have trigger bans in place, which would ban abortion automatically. The end of Roe v. Wade appears to be on the horizon, but we don't need to wait to see how the court decides this case. Draconian abortion bans are already cutting off access to abortion care in communities across the country. In some states, including my home state of Texas, extreme bans on abortion have pushed care almost entirely out of reach. And at the core of these attacks on abortion is the same sinister agenda that has powered the anti-choice movement and the radical right for decades, maintaining white patriarchal power no matter the cost. And those marginalized at every turn by our systems and institutions, communities of color and immigrant communities like ours today gathered in this room, members of the LGBTQ plus community, people with disabilities, we're bearing the brunt of these attacks. And we don't have to look far to see how these restrictions on our fundamental freedoms harm South Asian Americans and South Asians worldwide in particular. Take, for example, the high-profile case of Purvi Patel, who was prosecuted in Indiana for an alleged abortion. Her pregnancy outcome was criminalized, and it should never have been. Or Savita Halpinavar, the 31-year-old dentist who died from sepsis in Ireland after her request for an abortion was denied, The public outrage from her case changed Ireland's laws and profoundly changed the debate across the world about access to abortion. This month, our partners at the National Asian Pacific American Women's Forum are appealing to organizations, community members, and allies to sign a letter of solidarity in support of reproductive freedom for the AAPI community from the AAPI community. And I encourage every one of you to join them. I'll be frank with you, the stakes are higher than ever. But I know that no matter what the future brings, we're all in this together and we are far from alone. The vast majority of Americans are with us, 8 out of 10, including the vast majority of Indian Americans and South Asian Americans. And we are mobilizing across the nation to make clear that we are ready to take on the fight for our fundamental freedoms to every corner of this country. Together, we are building a future where all of us, no matter who we are, where we live, or what we believe, has the freedom to make our own decisions about whether to start or grow our families. The road ahead may be daunting, but with you by our side, I know that we can and we will meet this moment. Thank you for all you do. I'm looking forward to our continued work together with impact. Thanks so much for having me today, and I'm so sorry again to miss you.
Minnie, if you're still there, we're incredibly grateful you took the time with COVID to still join us virtually and hope you have a smooth recovery. Next, I am so excited to introduce our fantastic moderator, who will then introduce some more incredible women trailblazers. So, Keisha Ram Hinsdale is the state senator representing Chittenden in Vermont, a role she has been in since her election in 2020. She has many firsts, including being the first woman of color to be elected to the Vermont State Senate. She first ran for office, yeah, big deal, give it up. She first ran for office in 2008 when she ran and won her election for state representative, becoming the youngest legislator in the country. She currently works to build social equity and inclusion in nonprofit organizations, businesses, school districts, and municipalities. She served in the House of Representatives from 2008 to 2016, where she sat on the House General, Housing and Military Affairs, and Ways and Means Committees, and as Vice Chair of the House Natural Resources and Energy Committee. She has also served as co-chair of the Vermont Attorney General's Immigration Task Force, and as a member of the boards of Emerge Vermont, the Main Street Alliance of Vermont, Planned Parenthood of Northern New England. This list goes on and on, so clearly she knows what she is talking about. Keisha Ram, please join us, Senator, in welcoming the rest of our panel's distinguished guests.
Thank you, Sarah. So you heard a list of accomplishments, but one thing I can't promise to do is get us back on track time-wise, but I will do my best. I'm going to look over to Sarah to sort of help me know when we should try and wrap up and let you go to the next panels. But this has been a wonderful lunch, a wonderful day so far. I'm honored to be with you, and I can't say that I would know exactly how Minnie would have done this. I'm asking myself that now. But it taking her place in moderating, I think what I will do is call each amazing woman we have in this next panel up one by one to take a seat while I read their biographies. And a lot of what Minnie said, she was giving you the real truth here, is daunting, but I think you'll find that each one of these women will help lift your spirits back up and know that we are in this fight together and we are going to win it. First, I'd like to call up Dr. Sadaf Jaffer. Dr. Jaffer is an assemblywoman representing New Jersey's 16th legislative district. As assemblywoman, Sadaf uses her local expertise to work to amplify the voices of LD16 residents, especially underrepresented communities. Sadaf is the first Asian American woman and the first Muslim American to be sworn into the New Jersey General Assembly. She is the former mayor of Montgomery Township and currently teaches at Princeton University. She and her husband, Dan, a professor at Princeton, are raising their daughter in Montgomery Township. Next, I'd like to call to the stage Opal Vadan. Opal served as the executive assistant and trip director to Secretary Hillary Rodham Clinton. During her time there, she was also a book collaborator on the Book of Gutsy Women. Prior to that, she was on the National Advance Team for Hillary for America. During the pandemic, she volunteered with World Central Kitchen, a food relief organization. Opal graduated from Pace University in 2015 and was named to Pace University's 30 Under 30. She is also a two-time New York Woman in Communications Leadership Scholarship winner, a former campus editor-at-large for Huffington Post, a former on-camera TV reporter for TV Asia, one of our favorites. Opal spent her 2014 semester interning at the White House in the Office of Communications, and she is back there as the personal aide to the Vice President of the United States. Next, we have Rohini Kasolu. Rohini currently serves as Domestic Policy Advisor to Vice President Kamala Harris, after previously serving on the Biden-Harris transition team and as a senior advisor on the Biden-Harris campaign. Before that, she was a Spring 2020 resident fellow at the Institute of Politics at the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University. Kasolu has a dedicated career in public service and was the first South Asian American woman to serve as Chief of Staff in the U.S. Senate. She served as Vice President-elect Harris's Chief of Staff for her Senate office and later her presidential campaign. Before that, she was Policy Director for U.S. Senator Michael Bennet of Colorado, where she oversaw economic, healthcare, and budget issues. She has done so many amazing things, and I am going to go to our last speaker. Everyone has an amazing biography. Rohini. Our last panelist feels like she needs hardly any introduction. She has been a trailblazer and not just created a trail, but turned around and laid down tracks so other people could come blazing down the path after her. Neera Tanden, White House Staff Secretary and Senior Advisor. Is Neera here? Oh, great. Okay, I was like, oh my God, I'm so worried. Neera Tanden is the staff secretary and a senior advisor to the president. Prior to her current role in the Biden-Harris administration, she was the president and CEO of the Center for American Progress and the CEO of the Center for American Progress Action Fund. Tanden has also served in both the Obama and Clinton administrations, as well as on presidential campaigns. She previously served as a senior advisor for health reform at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. In that role, she developed policies around reform and worked with Congress and stakeholders on particular provisions of President Barack Obama's signature legislative achievement, the Affordable Care Act. And again, I could go on, but let us get to hearing from these amazing women. Oh, it's on. Okay, it's already on. I promise I'm a state senator. So the first question that I have is a bit of a Genesis story question. You know, all of you have really celebrated careers in public service. And, you know, I can't help but think of when I won my first election at 22 and I called my Dottie G and I said, Dottie G, I'm the youngest legislator in the country. And she said, oh, you were always so good at singing. Could you do that instead? And so, you know, in addition to just telling us what sparked your career in public service, as a South Asian woman, you know, were there moments where you felt like you were battling your family or your culture to really take that risk and jump into public service? Neera, I wonder if we could start with you. You just nodding your head.
Sure, thank you. And it's a great honor to be with such an amazing panel and so many leaders from this room. And I just really want to say thank you to Impact. I have been working in public policy for 20 years. I hate to date myself, but it is actually 2 decades. And I started in Washington in the 90s, and there were very few organizations for Asian Americans and none for Indian Americans. And I really feel how vital it is for our community to have a voice in the debates. And I just want to say hats off to Impact. So I'll answer the question, I will, but I just really want to say thank you. And I thank you for all that you're doing. Everyone here is engaging in the debates for our country, but I know you do more when you're not here, so thank you for that as well. So I have a story right on this topic, which is when I've been in public policy, as I said, I started in the Clinton administration. I worked for First Lady Hillary Clinton and was dual-hatted to the Domestic Policy Council in the late 1990s. And when I was there, you have on this panel 3 Indian American women working in the White House right now. And there are more Indian Americans working there. I think I was the only one working in the late 1990s, or one of really a handful, working in the administration. And so we've made a lot of progress. But I also think there were so few of us back then because as more recent immigrants than others, a lot of our families had pushed us to be doctors or engineers or others, and public policy was a new arena. And so I experienced that very sort of firsthand. So I worked, as I said, for Hillary Clinton, and I actually was getting married, and Hillary very nicely threw me a wedding shower. Which was lovely, really amazing to have a wedding shower. So I invited my family to come and my friends and people in my wedding party. And my mother had met Hillary before, but this was her second meeting with Hillary. And so I bring my mom over to meet Hillary, and Hillary's like, "So great to see you again. You must be so incredibly proud of your daughter. She's making such a great contribution." And my mom says to her, "Her friends in law school are making a lot more money." I mean, like, word by word. And I'm experiencing this, like, slow motion train wreck. And just like my fiance, now husband, is there, and we're all looking. And then Hillary feels, like, defensive about this, right? So she says, "No, but Neera is making laws. People in law firms are working on what the law is. Neera is helping make laws," which was a little overstated for the moment, but I really appreciated it. And then my mom says, "But some of her friends are making partner." At which point my husband jammed in a drink, but it was a bit like Hillary took in stride. It was all good. I will say that a few months later, Hillary ran for Senate and asked me to go to the campaign. And then I got a big raise moving on to the campaign. And she called me and said, "You need to tell your mom that you did get a raise." And I said, "Sure." So I would say sorry, I apologize for the long story, but it is a case where I think, being in public policy was like a new experience for my mom, and really wasn't in the path that she was thinking for me. I do think she is proud of me now, but it was back then, and even now, I think it is sometimes harder for immigrants who struggled a lot to be successful here, to see public policy and sometimes the ugliness of politics as an arena that makes sense. And so I appreciate all of us pushing into new directions and ensuring that our community is represented, because I also know from the last 20 or so years that who is here in Washington and whose voices are represented matters fundamentally to what happens in laws, in debates, and really what happens overall to the trajectory of our community.
Thanks, Neera. We truly can never win. Rohini, let's go to you.
Thanks. And just to echo Neera's thank you to everyone. And there's so many leaders in the room looking around, and so many of us have worked together for years. But I think to echo the point that I think for all of us, when we started, for me it was about almost 15 years ago, and I started out in the Senate, I couldn't find people that looked like me walking up and down the hallway. But the number one question that I often get asked by young people, to your earlier point, is, yeah, how do I deal with my parents if I want to do this line of work? And the thing I try and always emphasize with them is that, if you take many of us up here, I can guarantee to tell you that our parents still complain. So it doesn't actually matter what you end up doing, because like they'll still have thoughts. Even if you have the kids, you get married, get the fancy job, they will still complain about something. So when you realize that end point, you just actually start to realize, okay, this is a path I should go on because this is something I want to do, not because it's going to please any specific person. And I think to Neera's point earlier, you know, it's a path that many immigrants don't know how it's going to work out. I mean, if you look at a lot of what people's parents are pushing them to do, it's something with some more career stability. It's like you work this many tracks to become a partner. You do this many things to become a doctor. And it's a lot more anxious and unknown for them, and for all the reasons that they came to America, for so many reasons. And that anxiety is what, you know, is leading a lot of the same questions and probing. And so it's not easy necessarily to, you know, try and figure out, you know, a way to tell them, yes, I'm joining a campaign, but we have no idea we could also lose, and then we all lose our jobs at the end. That doesn't feel good to, you know, have to explain that part. And the world that we live in, you know, as we're seeing now, it's hyper-polarized in terms of the different attacks. But I think the most important thing, you know, that you know, you hit upon in your question is, you know, what is driving behind the force of, you know, making the decision to go into in public service, and the idea that you can shape different concepts or laws, or that you can bring your lived experience to a room and actually make a difference, you know, is really what I think inspires so many people in this room to keep doing what they're doing. So that would be my sort of sense of encouraging words for people. Just know that your parents are still going to complain, but, you know, but at the end of the day, I think carving out a path in which, you know, you've made all your own decisions is also equally as gratifying too.
So true. Thank you. Assemblywoman.
Sure. So, you know, I think people from our communities are very successful in lots of different fields, but haven't been going into politics as frequently. And so, as others have said, it's a new path, it's something different. But one of the things that I say to South Asian communities is that democracy is a very valuable thing. It's priceless. And our countries back home have an anti-colonial history. People have fought and died for democracy back home and here. And so if we value that democracy, we have to participate in that democracy. And that starts with voting in every election, that starts with running for office. So I think what motivated me was seeing that some of my elected officials did not reflect my values, did not reflect what I thought was my best interest. And so I started thinking that there had to be people from my background with those values in office. And if I wanted other people to run, then I should run myself. I think that in terms of responses from family or from community, you know, I first ran for office in 2016. And I remember, you know, members of my family saying, not that they didn't respect what I was doing, but saying, you know, is this the time for maybe people like us to lie low and to not bring attention to ourselves? And I think that they anticipated maybe some of the hate speech and reactions that I might get. But what I said was, you know, if we don't get involved now, who knows if we even will have those rights. We have to get involved now. And then since I've been elected, it's been so heartening to see the support from communities. I think, you know, there can be traditional gender roles. I think all of the women up here and many women in the audience have probably fought back against patriarchy and gender roles. And I think I did that when I was younger. But I've been really heartened to see South Asian communities, Muslim communities welcome me with open arms, want me to speak, want me to introduce me to their daughters. To me, that shows that our communities know how important this is, and it's just very difficult when you haven't had that ladder, you haven't had people to look up to. Now we're seeing more and more of that, so happy to see everyone in the room today and hope to continue this trajectory of many more women from our communities in office and in other roles in government.
Absolutely, thanks for being a part of that. Yeah. And Opal.
Well, once again, I want to echo just a huge thank you to Neil and Deepak for an incredible summit. And I remember growing up in this country and remembering I don't see anyone who looks like me on TV or representing my values. And so as I got older and got an internship in the Obama White House, I realized I could be part of this change. And for my family, it was really hard because I wasn't the doctor, I wasn't the engineer, and even working for Secretary Clinton, same thing, kind of like Neera, my mom would be like, tell Hillary to find you a husband. I don't understand. You guys travel all over the world, tell Hillary to find you a husband. And it became a running joke where Secretary Clinton would call my mom and be like, don't worry, I'm on the lookout, but let your daughter do her job. And even now working for the Vice President, Kamala Harris, too, it's, we'll travel all around the world with her. We'll have incredibly bilateral meetings, and the Vice President really represents our country. We were just in Abu Dhabi oh my gosh, we landed yesterday. And still my mom's like, have you met anyone yet? We have a marriage proposal for you. Are you sure you don't want to leave your job? So it's one of those things growing up. We didn't have organizations like this, right? You couldn't see that you could be, like Neera and Rohini and the assembly member. So what really motivates me to continue to do my job is all the other, little brown girls and boys in this country, right? Going to school, and they can look at people who I'm on this panel with. They can look at everyone in this room knowing that they can grow up and be anything and do anything. And that's why I do my job every day, because I get to work for the first, Black and South Asian woman of color vice president. And I think about, getting made fun of for my name being Opal Vadhan and having oil in my hair and not looking like everyone else. And now if kids, are going to get made fun of that, they have to respect the vice president. She is the most powerful woman in this country. And that kind of is what motivates me. Though, our families still have the questions, why aren't you married yet? Are you sure you don't want to leave your job? We'll find a nice marriage proposal for you. But we all have to continue to do this work. And once again, so grateful to be on this panel with incredible South Asian women and to be here with all of you.
The vice president is lucky to have you, and I'm worried you're going to get some marriage proposals after this as well. So, we've heard some pretty bad news today from Minnie, and we know we're here in the seat of power where we know there's huge struggles going on and around the country. Mass shootings and just a lot of despair. Some recent good news was the elevation of Ketanji Brown Jackson to the Supreme Court, the first time a Black woman has sat on the highest court in the land. And I was really struck during her confirmation hearing when Senator Cory Booker, really heralded her as a great American. And it made me realize, as a woman of color, South Asian woman with a funny name, how little we get called great Americans and get lifted up in this country. And so, I was just wondering, I wrote an article for every Ketanji Brown Jackson, be a Cory Booker. Have you had a Cory Booker? Have you ever stopped and felt like, you know what, I am seen as an American and as someone who's giving back to this country? And how do you try to do that for others as well? And I'll just start with whoever wants to jump in, and then we'll kind of go back in a circle.
I can start. Yeah. So when I won my election to local government, and I was the first South Asian woman, first South Asian member of that local government in my township, and my opponents put a post saying, oh, we lost the election. And the first comment was, I was born in this country and some Indian's gonna tell me what to do? You can't fix stupid. This was my welcome to elected office. And actually, my husband, he's not very active on Facebook, but he put his picture up. He usually had like some random thing. He put his picture up and he responded and he said, she was born in this country too. She's an American. And, and I feel like those of us who are in politics, we know the pressures our spouses feel. Because I think it's so hard to see someone you love being attacked. And so I appreciated that moment that he stepped up for me. And then I would say that it's just every time that I speak, especially to community groups, I remember going to a seniors lunch and I sat down and this woman was so excited because she had never met a woman mayor. She was an older white American woman and she was just like holding my hand. She's like, oh, you're the mayor of the town? A woman mayor? Like, she was so excited. And to her, it wasn't even about my race or my ethnic background. It was just a proud moment for her as a woman to know that there was a woman in leadership. So I think there are those moments when we have those groups of solidarity that really shows us that it's not just, it is important, you know, that we speak to our racial and ethnic communities, but also to have solidarities as people of color, as women, as, you know, whatever our agendas are, as people who are activists for healthcare or for the environment, that those are the different moments when we can embrace all those elements of our identities and also what we're passionate about.
So, yeah, I would love to just build on that. You know, it's, I think that the debates about politics have really become, you know, incredibly ugly over the last several years. And I don't think, you know, I think engaging in the debate is so vital because in some ways it's more contested than ever. As I've said, I worked in the Clinton administration, I worked in the Obama administration, and I would say that for the first time, in 2016 was the first year that in social media posts or elsewhere, I saw, you know, directed hatred towards myself as an Indian American. Like I received posts, I mean, I'm a little out there online sometimes, but I would get posts back of like, go back to India, and really derogatory posts from white nationalists, like vitriolic assaults that really separated, you know, really tried to separate me from being an American. And, you know, I think it's, you know, we shouldn't ignore the hatred that exists in the country that we just saw materialize itself in Buffalo. And that, you know, what is really at stake in a lot of our debates, and I've talked about this before, is a question of really who is American, and whether immigrants like us are truly American. And, you know, it really struck me in 2016 that there are groups of people in the country who do not believe that I, a person who was born here, but wouldn't matter if I was an immigrant or not, but I was born here, I was not truly American. And I think that is a product of the divisive politics we have seen over the last several years. An ugly politics that pits other Americans against immigrants, against people of color, against people with accents, against people who wear different kinds of clothes, to say that America is only for some and not for all of us. And that is why I think it is really vital that our community steps up and proudly demonstrates every day that we are American, deserve a voice here, and are proud of engaging in policy and politics. Because it is not, you know, I mean, it is a contest. I do think we should just be frank that there are more and more voices in our politics, some winning elections in places all around the country, who think that the country is only for groups that don't look like us, not for groups that do. So, thank you. I hope that's another motivation for all of us to be engaged.
Yeah, I mean, Opal and I are very blessed in terms of working for Vice President Kamala Harris. You know, when I started with her, it was her first days as a United States Senator. And I had left her, I had interviewed with her while I was simultaneously interviewing, I'm not sure she's aware, but for the private sector as well. And what I was, you know, really intrigued by is that here's this South Asian woman that, you know, is trying to also navigate being the first of her kind to do this in the Senate. And so for me, it was like this kind of social experiment in the Senate, because all you're used to is, you know, predominantly white senators walking around. And, you know, we knew that it had to be successful, right? Because she had so many people that were gonna come, you know, hope to come after her. And so that was my first experience. But what was interesting was, you know, I had been with two senators before, and one when he was starting up, Michael Bennet. And the difference I saw when senators were meeting her versus him, you know, just how do you say your name, and, you know, and they would, the way that they would approach her, almost like she was an exotic animal walking around, and try and make her feel a little bit smaller. And the things that I saw all the time, she would show up, her shoulders back, and would just own her space. And I think for so many of us, watching that day in and day out, I've seen her, when, on TV people have seen hearings, but also behind closed doors, she's the same person. So, when Trump administration officials would come in, and she would have done all this homework in terms of, asking them what, the rationales that led to the Muslim ban, and, really probing in front of her other senators that were just, can't we all get along? And being able to watch her in those spaces, take her space and, show up every day, knowing that there were people seeking to make her space smaller. I think that was so compelling for me to, decide that this is a person I'm going to work for a long time, but also that, the other staff, particularly when I became her Senate Chief of Staff, one of the biggest things that we were able to accomplish together was, we ended up winning the award for one of the most diverse Senate offices. We were able to get to 70% people of color, majority women. Thank you. And what's, and we had people come up to us in the office often and say, this is the first time I've been able to work somewhere where I can be my full self. And it means they didn't have to filter what they were saying, they could just speak as who they are. And it ranged from all different ethnicities and races. And what you see over time, though, the impact of that, of somebody that shows up. So when people are often, she gets asked, what is it like to be the first, et cetera. And for her, she's been doing this for a long time, being the first. But for all of us that, work with her and see her often, the daily thing, day in and day out, because it's not like particularly when we were in the general election, and the Republicans, were like, look at her name, look at this, and look at her background, she's not American, all the same things that they did to President Obama. It's not like those things don't affect people over time. It's just that, holding that role of responsibility at these levels and having to put on a face every day and also own the space because that all the people are looking up to you to own that space. So for us, I think so many of us up here that work in the White House and others that get to have met with her, I think that, for us is very inspiring every day.
Yeah. And that sounds like a really well-run office too.
But she will always ensure when we have these meetings in her office that no one is left out at the table, that especially for young people in this room, find people who will lift you up and that your voice matters. Growing up, I always say this, right? I didn't see people who looked like me. And so now, especially at the White House, I see Neera, I see Rohini, and we have such a large contingent of South Asian people that, like the Vice President says, she may be the first, but she won't be the last. It's kind of up to us and everyone in this room to be those Cory Bookers for other people, other young people, to make sure we are opening up the spaces, giving people a seat at the table. And I just can't emphasize enough of how important it is to continue to do that.
Absolutely. I'm looking at Sarah, who's helping us keep time. We are Indians. This is hard for us. Is there like closing statements? Do we have time for?
Do one more question or statement.
Okay, great. I know we wish we had all the time in the world. This has been amazing. The theme of today is dream with ambition, right? And I think we all probably look at that and have very strong feelings about when we've been told we're dreaming too big, too ambitious. Vice President Harris herself was told you should be more humble, and I'm sure we all had a strong reaction to that. Yeah, just closing remarks on dreaming and being ambitious and what that's meant to you and what that can mean to especially young women in the audience.
So I'll start. I do think that there's perceptions of what women are like, and Indian women, and South Asian women, and Asian women, and so I think the question of ambition. I mean, we dream with ambition, but the term ambitious has had a positive connotation when applied to men, and perhaps less of a kind of positive connotation when applied to women and Asian women and women of color. So I will close with another story, which is when I was Hillary's LD, again, now we're in the early 2000s, legislative director when she was in the Senate. She did this floor speech, and it was really well received. The press was really great. There was immediate positive reaction from her colleagues, and we were walking back from the Senate floor, and she asked me who was in charge of the speech. And I said, and I will say, I said this because I sort of thought, you know, maybe it was the way I was brought up or gender messages, but my thought was to give everyone else on my team, the kudos. So I said it was a team effort and she was like, well, who on the team? And I said, well, the speech writers and some of the ledge staff. And she was like, but whose idea was it? And I said, it was a team effort. And she stopped in the hallway and looked at me and said, Neera, do you think male staffers would say it was a team effort, or would they say it was their idea? I was like, when you put it that way. And she said, you have to own your success. And I have to say, for me, now, I'm not really known as a meek person. I think that's fair. But even for me, in my early 30s, my first instinct was it's obnoxious to take credit. I think the social cues, and I think I think it's a genuine thing to struggle with. A lot of the social cues are, it's obnoxious when women go out there and take credit for things. And it's just not seen as obnoxious when men do the same thing. And I think, we see this in surveys of business places and elsewhere. And so I think this is just an important thing for all of us to remember. We are all leaders in this room. I'm a leader, we're all leaders. And it's really to encourage women to take credit, to own their success, and to applaud them for it. Because I do think that is something we all have struggled with. And when it exists and holds us back, it is something that's a challenge for all of us.
I think, when people are talking about, dreaming with ambition, that one of the things we have to just keep in mind is that so many of us are sitting up here, and you'll be, so many of you will sit on different panels and things like that, carving out paths that no one's ever done. And that is really what it's all about, because at the end of the day, the path that, when you look back at your career, even thus far, for every one of you sitting around, no one could have properly predicted where exactly you would be and what exactly you'd be doing or thinking about doing. Because for so many of us sitting around, we've not had people that have done this before. And what you get used to over time, which is a double-edged sword, is knowing that you have to keep going to carve out something in the future, knowing that there's a very high chance no one has ever done what you've done. And so we have to, I think, to the original point of why this room is here and this space is here, is because we have to hold hands doing this, and knowing that there's people in this room that are really pushing for you to do that. I myself, I remember doing basically my dad called and was like, I have a friend, his daughter is 13 and she does a podcast. And I was like, I would never do this podcast if it wasn't for the fact that you were friends with this person. So I have to end up on this podcast with a 13-year-old lovely girl, Indian girl with braces, just full of life, and she's doing this podcast on women that, you know, inspire her. And it was the first time I heard a young person read the same biography that I sit on. And, you know, if I go to a conference, people read the bio, and it's the first time I had heard a very young girl read my own biography back to me. And I was sitting there thinking, I've done a lot, actually. like 13-year-old me would be like very proud of myself. As somebody whose parents used to cut out clips of like people doing things in India abroad and then like leave it on my bed and be like, this person achieved residency at like 19 years old. I was like, I'm awesome. And we don't get enough of, I am awesome. I know. So I encourage all of you guys, I mean, you don't have to find a young person to read out your bio to you, but to keep in mind that, you know, there's just not, it's not a big thing in our culture to really take credit or to think, you know, I am doing awesome. But, you know, even if it's not all figured out, just know at some point that, you know, it will all fall into place. And again, I go back to the fact that rooms like this are so inspiring because you're looking around at a bunch of people that made a bunch of choices to get this far in their career without anyone telling them what to do. And so for that, you know, thank you for having us here.
I feel like this could be called Dream with the Ambition Your Parents Have for You.
So I would say, you know, keep in mind that anything is possible and be creative in your goals. And something that I tell myself often is that politics is an art, not a science. Nobody has it figured out. Otherwise, we wouldn't see upsets. And I'm reminded of when I ran in my town, it was all Republican local government, Republican congressman, Republican governor. And someone asked me, oh, you're just running, you know you're gonna lose, right? And I said, no, I think I can win. And I won, becoming the only Democrat, the first one in several years. Then we took over the majority. I became the mayor. Then we took over our state legislative district, turned an all Republican district to an all Democratic district. If we had just listened to those people who said, this is this way, this district is red, that's just what people want you to believe, that things have to keep going the way they've always gone. But no, aim for that change, and you can see that change. And the thing about politics is, if you have the votes, you win. So no matter what the so-called experts say, no matter what the commentators say, if you have the people on your side, you win. So that's my message.
I just have to say, you have to dream big, right? There will be constantly people who will tell you, you can't do this. It's never been done. You don't look the part. You didn't go to an Ivy League school. You have to continue to dream big and believe in yourself. You know, I talk about so much growing up and not knowing anyone in public service or politics. I didn't have the connection. I didn't have the Ivy League education, and all my friends and classmates were like, maybe you should go a safer path, right? Maybe be a teacher. Maybe, you know, try and just work in retail and you'll figure it out. But you have to believe in yourself, and you have to find people who are willing to help you and lift you up. And for me, you know, Huma Abedin, who is once again a South Asian woman doing incredible things, also has a great book out, Both and, highly recommend it. I remember, you know, working for her, and she was always telling me, Opal, you have to continue to push yourself and believe in yourself, because no one else is going to do it for you. So to everyone in this room, I would just say, continue to dream big, and you'll find your path. It won't be a linear path. It will be a roller coaster. And then along the way, you'll find incredible women. I get to work with Rohini and Neera every day, who will continue to uplift you, give you seats at the tables, and then you'll have to pay it forward to some other young South Asian women to let them know that they can also do anything and be anything.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. I feel deeply re-energized and inspired. I think others do too. Thank you all as an audience for your patience in letting us go over. And I'll hand this back over to Sarah, who's waiting right there to take it. So we can move on. Yeah.
Okay. Let's give one more round of applause for our incredible panel. We are happy to be running on Indian Standard Time for these women. So thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing all of your advice, for everything you're doing, like you said, to ensure that even though you may have been first, you are not the last. We are so incredibly grateful. Transitioning now, so we are going to go into afternoon training sessions, which I am personally the most excited about, in that we're going to take all the things you've been talking about all morning, hearing from policy experts, inspiring women, our congressional members, and translate that into action. So each of these sessions right now are hands-on skills-based trainings. So you have 3 options, and we encourage you in a minute to go to them as quickly as possible. If you are speaking, you should head that way. First, be the change, what to know from when running for office. So if you are even considering running for office, committing to public service, you should go to this session. You'll hear from a very distinguished panel and be able to network. Next, we have They Sees Vote. They Sees Vote is happening in Pierce, which is in the hallway around the corner. This one, we have, I think, a dozen different partners who are all going to share tips for how to mobilize your communities. And we also are launching, in partnership with all of these organizations, a new theyseesvote.org website and doing a WhatsApp training where you can send mass WhatsApp messages using this really awesome tool. So check that out. And last but not least, we are launching our Volunteer What's True crew and talking about concrete tactics to combat mis and disinformation, which you've heard a lot about today, you've seen in your own communities. So go to that training to learn how to spot it, how to talk to others about it, and about impacts efforts. It is 1:10. If you all can plan on going to those rooms, 2 of them are on the 2nd floor. They Sees Vote is around the corner. We'll get started by 1:20. Thanks, y'all.